Yeah, but okay. Right, we're recording going.
We're starting.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Coffee with a Purpose. I'm kind of the one who's doing most everything today. I'm Martin Kessel. I think you know me, and we're not going to do introductions because I think we pretty much know everybody that's online right now. We have a little bit of a different technical setup. Rich Sidney has agreed to help us with the technical moderation because I can't really do Doug's job and my own job and be the presenter all at the same time. It's like a little bit overwhelming. So thank you.
And why? Come on.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much, Rich. And he's doing things somewhat differently technically. So if people expect to be able to unmute themselves or things, you may not be able to.
Yeah, if you want to if you want to talk, please raise either your Zoom hand or, if you can't find your Zoom hand, put your hand up and I'll try to catch you and unmute you.
Oh, and here's our son, Nathan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if people have questions in the chat, I probably won't see them either. So you can.
Yeah, I'm watching the chat, so.
So anyway, we'll get going. My wife Bev, I think she's been here for some of the a couple other presentations that I've done on other trips, but they've been kind of a long time ago. So this particular the reason we're here today is we were on a trip recently to the lower Danube, which is kind of into the Eastern Europe part. And I figure a little river cruise on the Danube isn't something that's that exciting to people who are interested in world issues and town issues, and pretty pictures of castles and churches isn't what people want to see. But as I sort of pondered the trip, more meaning came into it. We saw a lot of this was not really just the Blue Danube. It was the Eastern Europe part, which were under communist rule, which has lots of dictators and which had a huge interethnic war in Yugoslavia back in the 90s. And there seemed to be, and plus it was where the Holocaust took place through this entire area. So there's lessons to be learned that seemed appropriate for our country's in today. And as the weeks went on since the trip, those only became more prominent. So I'm going to try to keep the politics to what's reasonable, but and show some of the nice things that we saw as well. But there are a lot of connections. So now I got to figure out how to share. I think we figured out how to do it.
Yeah, I think we figured it out.
I think we do. We're going to do the whole screen and then.
Don't forget to click the sound thing.
And the quick sound thing, yep. And then
Lost it.
yeah, no, I have it. It's just the wrong window. Okay.
No, it's up there.
Let me open it up. Let me maximize it here. And that's about as full screen as we can get. Okay. Okay. So this is a map from Viking. We did a Viking river cruise, which Viking pretty much owns the market for river cruises.
Not totally, but.
Well, at least 50%, I believe. You can't avoid them if you watch any PBS.
Right.
So we had done a river cruise last year on what we call the Upper Danube, starting in Germany, somewhere around where my mouse pointer is on the border of Austria, and then went.
To see your mouse on the screen.
It is a little hard, but I think you'll have to do the best you can. I can't do
there
any
it is.
better. Yeah, there we go. And then all the way through Austria and into Budapest. So that's the upper part of the Danube. It covers those three countries. It covers Germany, Austria, and Hungary, plus a teeny bit of Slovakia at the corner of Slovakia, which is next to the Czech Republic. And having arrived in Budapest, I said, "Oh, well, there's a whole lot of Danube left here. I think we need to go to the rest of the Danube." So I kept trying to get Bev to agree, and she finally agreed to it.
Well, the first cruise we went on was a vegan cruise with a company called Vegan Travel. And I wasn't sure if it was going to do the job for me, but they really worked hard to make sure I had enough to eat. So,
Do that.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's definitely an issue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's definitely an issue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So this current cruise that we was March through mid-April. We started with a pre-cruise add-on and then we had a post-cruise add-on. So we ended up in 6 countries, which is a little bit overwhelming. So we started with a pre-trip stop in Prague in the Czech Republic. Then we took the bus to Budapest, where we picked up on the Danube and continued. The last cruise had ended in Budapest. So this one started in Budapest, through Hungary, a couple other places in Hungary. Then we get to this really interesting area down here, and it's hard to see the labels, but on the left side of the Danube is Croatia, just the edge of Croatia, not the tourist part. Croatia is a big hotspot for tourists, but that's on the coast, down by and sort of near Greece. But this was on the Danube, right on the border of I can't get the mouse to stop where I want it, right on the border of Serbia, and that's of course the site of the wars that took place in the 1990s. Starting between Serbia and Croatia, and then the next one was Bosnia, and then later was Kosovo.
Well, we were corrected after we actually I asserted that to the.
Well, they were wars, whether they were wars of independence or wars of liberation is another question, but
We
they
were
were
told
wars.
these were civil wars.
But we'll talk about that.
Because Croatia had declared independence, but Yugoslavia, centered in Serbia, had not acknowledged it, had not accepted it, so they viewed it as a civil war in Serbia. Croatia viewed it as an invasion.
So we then continued to Belgrade, capital of Serbia, was the capital of Yugoslavia. And then the Danube runs the border between Bulgaria and Romania, which are the sort of the key Balkan countries, and that's a beautiful area, which has a lot of culture too. And then we ended up in Bucharest, which is the capital of Romania. And then we did a final side trip, an add-on trip to Transylvania, which is how Dracula gets into the picture. So if you were wondering why Dracula was on our agenda, that's frankly, after all the heavy wars and dictators and Holocaust stuff, Dracula was kind of a great escape at the end.
Could you explain Iron Gate?
Oh, yes, it's kind of not where it really is. It's at the end of Serbia. I think it's at the very end of Serbia, like after Vidin. And it's nobody's gonna say, yeah, let's see the photos. The walls go up on both sides.
It's a rock wall.
It's like a rock
It's-
wall.
it's a
They
rock-
call it an iron.
it's a natural
I'll
rock.
call it a rock formation. You're going through the rocks on both sides, and it's very dramatic.
It's not really a gate, it's just a
Not a
rock
gate.
formation.
So it doesn't have anything to do with wars or anything?
No.
It's just a natural formation.
Mhm,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Thank
It's
you.
not political.
It sounded like an Iron Curtain, like.
Right.
okay,
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of Iron Curtain, this entire cruise is within the communist area. Some of it was part of the Iron Curtain. The former Yugoslavia was communist, but it wasn't under the Soviet domination. So really, it was under Marshal Tito, which is a much more benevolent colony. So that wasn't really
It was
behind
actually
it.
worse.
You think it was really?
According to my grandparents, it
Could
was
be,
worse.
could be. We heard better, but
We heard better.
there's many points of view, and I don't know the truth. But in either
No,
case,
he stole all the money from my grandparents, so.
well, in that case, we'll definitely follow for that. But in any case, the relations with the United States were pretty good as opposed to the ones that were under the Soviet. So in that respect. So starting off, that's Czech Republic. And we start with our first tour in Prague. It's become a big place for tourists now, and it also that was one of the reasons we went. The other was all the Jewish sites. So this is the famous astronomical clock, which is actually from the 14th century. It was started in the clock was started in 1410, and they kept adding on pieces. It's in the old town hall. So there's 2 sections of the clock, and I don't understand what all of them do. And then there's an animatronics up in the top, which come out once a day. So I don't really understand what it does, but it is beautiful, and it's amazing they figured out all this stuff in the early 1400s as well. Beautiful streets. This is the old city and little stands you can stop to buy your coffee or ice cream or whatever you want.
Bubble tea,
Bubble tea, of course.
it's not what bubble tea is.
This is called the Old Town Bridge Tower. It leads to the Charles Bridge. This tower was built in 1357, so I wouldn't know any of this if I didn't have my notes in front of me. And then the bridge itself also started in 1357, was finally finished 1402, and it was the first bridge, first bridge over the Danube. And it's a big tourist attraction. There's a lot of sculptures on it. And then in the back on the hill is the what's called Prague Castle with the government buildings and church. And here's the gate leaving the bridge and going into the town on the other side. And I think we're going to have a video. The videos may or may not work very well. We have a problem with bandwidth, so bear with the videos, and we'll see what happens with this. In front of- And stop to admit Donna, and now my screen is
Oh, well, I would have gotten that in a minute.
yeah, it seemed to have caused me to not be able to proceed. I think I can do it over here, perhaps. There we go. So this is the same scene that we started with the presidential palace, but zoomed out slightly. And this actually made more of an impression on me than the changing of the guard. So we have the Czech flag and the Ukrainian flag, and I was not surprised to see support for Ukraine in Europe because Donald Trump had just prior to this time done his shouting match at Zelensky and pretty much pulled support from the Ukraine cause, and so it seemed given support to Putin. So I was expecting to see support for Ukraine, but it was more prominent here. This is kind of their most prominent flag location in front of the presidential palace. And the reason it is prominent in the Czech Republic occurred to me fairly quickly because every one of our guys, plus this young woman that we met at lunch, all mentioned 1938, and that left a big impression. So 1938 was the so-called Munich Agreement, or maybe the Munich giveaway, where Britain and France negotiated with Hitler to give away the outer areas, Sudetenland, the outer areas of the Czech Republic, or then Czechoslovakia, in exchange for lasting peace. So it was promised.
No comment.
Yeah. With the lasting peace lasted 6 months until they took the rest of Yugoslavia. But what the people in Prague particularly noted is this negotiation or this discussion took place without any participation on by the Czech people or the Czech government. And it paralleled totally what was going on here when Trump was ready to give away a piece of Ukraine without involving the Ukraine in negotiations. Although he's relented a bit on that, but he still expects to give away a piece of Ukraine. He just now is going to let them maybe be part of the negotiations as well. So moving on to lighter things.
Yeah, so just a comment,
Yeah.
Brinley has just texted us a link to the Munich Agreement, in case anybody's following that link.
You're reliable there, good. Yeah.
Thank you, Brinley. Thank you.
It's an interesting, I just had an interesting movie on it, and it's, the perspective at the time was, oh, wow, we're gonna have peace, this is a great deal. Yeah,
But not in the Czech Republic, because they were being
yeah,
told that they weren't being given peace.
so,
But they, to go on with that, they were, the woman at the cafe was saying there were 3 times that the rest of the world turned their back.
right, there was also 1968 when the Soviet was clamping down on with its sort of domination of the of the Soviet bloc, and it sent troops into Prague. And then there was also power times when Trump not only indicated that he wasn't going to support Ukraine, but he really wasn't going to help NATO out very much with their issues. But anyway, people in Europe are not feeling supported by the US at the moment, as you may expect. So evening, we got to get away from all this with it's called a folklore dinner. Huge, all these are tourists from different places, I guess, that joined for Hungarian food, particularly Hungarian beer. So Prague is known for beer. I didn't realize that, but it's almost as well known as Munich as far as beer. So they had trays of half-liter, what do you call it? The
Steins.
steins of beer. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And they had music and dancing. So I've put all the dancing in a video at the end, which we're gonna try to play. But this was, it was,
After many liters of beer.
yeah. Well, that's why they had so many, I guess. Okay, and then we went on the Jewish tour. So it's Prague is I think has more Jewish synagogues preserved than any other place in Europe. There was 6 preserved. I think one was under renovation. So this particular one that we started with is called the Old New Synagogue, which is, I guess it was new at one point, but it's been old for a while. It's was created in 1270. It's the oldest operating synagogue in Europe. And it was the entrance with a Gothic arch, and then inside you'll see it's really built in Gothic style, which is kind of jolting because I've never seen any other synagogues in Gothic style, but I've also haven't seen any other synagogues built in 1270 when the Gothic style was in its own. So it's quite impressive. It's still operating. And there's the ark. And the second one, the Pinkas Synagogue was 1535, a bit newer. And that one is not operating, but a lot of the synagogues are used for museums and various things. This one is used as a memorial for the Holocaust. These are the Czechoslovakia victims of the Holocaust. And this is one of the many rooms and stuff on the walls. Do you want to say anything about it? But
I have a friend whose parents were Holocaust survivors, and they went back to Prague where they had both come from, and then basically met there. And she said, go to the synagogue and look for my family. So you can see on each of the walls, there's things that are a little bit hard to see. Those are writing, floor to ceiling. There are towns and then names of people within those towns who perished in the Holocaust. So I did find her family name on one of them, but she said it's a common family name, and I had no idea what towns they were from.
Yeah.
And it was floor to ceiling, so you could only see the things that were. And half of the museum was shut off because they were doing some kind of renovation. So there was no chance I was going to find her family there, but more to come.
later we did. And then also in back of that synagogue is the Old Jewish Cemetery, which is they've just packed graves in. They had to do it piled up at some point. And the oldest grave is 1439 in that cemetery.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there a reason why Prague would have more temples that survive?
I have a guess, and it has to do with something that we talked natively about before. They gave the country away without fighting. So
There's no point to bombing it.
Yeah. So I mean,
Makes
that's,
sense. Probably the same
I guess from
tradition.
that point of view, maybe that was a good idea, but it's hard to really say that.
Yeah, it was almost not bombed. It was very little.
Yeah.
bombed.
So then churches would have survived the same
Yes.
way?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, most buildings survived. There was some accidental bombing
Mhm.
that they had meant to bomb a military facility, and it got closer to the center, but there was very little that was destroyed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And this is the largest one. It was actually in a different location. It was near a hotel. It's called the Jerusalem Synagogue, and it was in a totally different style. It's a revival style. This is actually relatively new. It was 1906. And it's more style with a touch of Art Nouveau, because that was in style in 1906. So here's the inside is pretty dramatic.
And this is one that my friend had not mentioned, and it wasn't on our Jewish tour because it was away from the others.
Yeah.
And Martin found it and we wanted to go and he noticed there was something upstairs. So.
But before we get to the upstairs, this is an Art Nouveau window.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
So we went upstairs and not this panel, but the panel I just,
is this one?
they were having,
One of them.
no, we didn't include that one. But, the first panel I saw was they were doing a display on Jews who came back to Prague after the war. And who was prominent in the Jewish community and what happened to them. And the first thing I saw was my friend's father.
Oh.
And he was very prominent in the Jewish community after the war. He was one of the leaders. And so I saw that one, took a picture of it, and then looked around to see if there were any more. This entire panel is devoted to him. So he's in each and every one of those photos and descriptions. So Martin took one that was
then
the
this
best
is-
photo of him. He's in the middle. So he was very prominent. So during the Nazi era, of course, everyone was sent to concentration camps as he was and my friend's mother. They were both, they both had harrowing stories of how they escaped. When he went back, he was prominent in the Jewish community. I don't think he was a member of the Communist Party though, and when the communists came in, at first the members of the Communist Party got a little bit of a pass, then they arrested all the Jews. And he was given enough warning before he was arrested that he could escape. So he and his family got out. Someone gave him heads up.
In the sixties, then that was.
Was when the Soviets took over, I'm not sure when that was.
Okay,
Right, pretty close after World War.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was,
much earlier.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
under Stalin.
Yeah.
So it was, yes, it was right after the war. So they had basically a very narrow window of getting help from the world and doing better, and then they came under communism and people again had to flee or were arrested.
And then next day we went on to
Oh, and one more thing about that is my friend was not aware that this existed. So I was able to send her the photos and she was thrilled. Her family was thrilled to know that this was there and honoring their father.
okay, so the next day we went to Terezin, which is it's always listed as a concentration camp site. Although strictly speaking, it's really not. It was started off as a Jewish ghetto where Jews were put. As they started adding more and more Jews to the existing buildings, it started looking more like a concentration camp. And then there's also a prison aspect of it, which was actually, I think I can zoom in. So on the left side, there's a large fortress, which is where the town is located. And then on the right side, on the very right side, there's what's called the small fortress. And that was always used as a prison, even by the Auto-Hungarian Empire. And it was taken over as a prison by the Nazis and used as a Gestapo prison for political prisoners. So we're going to look at each of those two aspects. If I can zoom it back, there we go. So that's a typical street, and I suppose the Jews lived in nice places like that when it was used as a ghetto. But it started with 3,000 people, which is the number that really could live comfortably, and ended up with 60,000 people, and things were not so good. So people would die just because they were in such bad conditions, not necessarily because they were exterminated there.
Yeah, it was overcrowded, there wasn't enough food, there was a lot of disease, it was, it wasn't good sanitation. So people died just by living there, and then they were also deported to concentration camps from there.
So this is the museum for the Holocaust, and this shows the deportations. The guide has Terezin is above her hand, and then she's kind of pointing over to Auschwitz and other lesser known concentration
The
camps.
big red circle to the right is Auschwitz.
Yeah, I see that.
Various passports of people who came through, and then Terezin is probably best known for these pictures of children's pictures.
Yeah, so Theresienstadt, the German pronunciation, was kind of a showcase for the Nazis to pretend to the world that they were actually treating the Jews well. So they had children doing pictures, some of them were pretty horrific, but they were photos. And they had sports games and they had musical performances and drama. And so that's what they showed to the Red Cross. They didn't show the political prison right nearby. The Red Cross could have walked over. They didn't.
Hmm.
They believed the Nazis when they said, oh, everything's wonderful, we're treating them well. But there's actually a book, with butterfly in the name, I'm forgetting the name of the book. Anyway, but
There've been several books of
Yeah.
these pictures.
but of children's pictures from Therese and from the Holocaust.
And then moving over to the small fortress, this is the entrance again with recognizing Ukraine. And this motto is instantly recognizable as what's on the outside of Auschwitz as well. Work will set you free, supposedly. And then we get to the blocks where people, this is again the prison, this is not the Jewish ghetto. And it was a political prison for people who misbehaved, people who might have been the equivalent of Democrats in those days, or or people who or liberal Republicans who questioned the dictator. Were sent here and to try to get them to reform.
No, just to punish them.
To punish them. Well, at first they actually were gonna let them out once they reformed, but I guess that probably never happened. And they did execute many, although that wasn't really the main purpose. So there's the gallows and they get then just shooting against the wall. So many died there, even though that wasn't the overall intent. It wasn't really an extermination camp. Yeah.
Can you go back one picture? The bunks, we were there too, and they would line the people up side by side, like 200. And they were just jammed in,
Yeah.
foot apart. And they would just sleep, lined
Yeah.
up like stacked wood.
Yeah,
And I mean, those are the conditions, 3 levels, those are
Right,
the
yeah.
conditions that they would, so there might be 400 or 500 people in that room. So
That part is similar to the concentration camps. that did that. So
So
I don't think they had actual showers. They,
Head to toe from the wall to the outside.
they would be
like sardines.
faced in or faced out, I don't know,
Yeah.
lined up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One right next to the other, they're like 5 feet or 6 feet deep, so they would, that would be how they'd line them up. So very horrific conditions. And then the other thing they said is the guards were afraid of the prisoners, or the Jewish folks, because there was so much disease. So they didn't want to be anywhere near them, because then they'd get sick. So they kind of left the Jewish people alone. Which was.
We were told that.
yeah.
Yeah, we had a good guy.
So that's good. Yeah, no, so in the political prison, it was Jews and others. It wasn't just Jews. Everybody could offend them in some way. So this was run by the Gestapo, and people in the last few months have been comparing ICE to the Gestapo, and at first it sounded like hyperbole to me, but as time goes on, it's sounding less like hyperbole. So my takeaways from this prison are, they would find people, catch them and lock them up without due process, without any legal process. There would be inhumane living conditions. They would execute people without trials. And fourth one is the overall intent is really fear and intimidation. So as much as they locked up a lot of people, they were trying to get people to not misbehave so they wouldn't have to catch them. And it sounds to me like we got 3 out of 4. We haven't yet seen ICE execute people, but maybe I'm missing something.
But you pointed out that the conditions that they're being held in can end up killing them. So
That's
it's-
certainly
they
true.
have the
So-
same effect.
In fact, these are the people who died there. The graves were put later. Some have names, some don't have names. And mostly from the conditions, not necessarily from the executions. And then, on that pleasant note, we can move on to Hungary. Which again is where we had been there before on our prior cruise. So we're starting our morning tour looking across the Danube. The Chain Bridge was a famous bridge, and then Buda Castle on the other side. And this was the first bridge across the river and actually united 2 cities, because it was Buda was on the far side and Pest, it was a separate city on the near side. and they at some point became one.
And I just remembered that when we were there, Netanyahu, the dictator, was visiting Orban, the dictator.
Yeah, I left that out. Yeah, yes, that's true. It was kind of ironic. And they had flags, Israel and Hungary flags on the bridges, just as we were leaving. We didn't really catch it. Yeah, so anyway, this is the chain bridge. Looks kind of like a chain. It's very picturesque. And then when you got to the top of Booty Hill, where the castle is, this is the classic view. So I had to include this. So every time you see a river, first of all, it's the most popular river cruise route, at least from Germany to get to Budapest,
Yeah.
not the part we went. This has the chain bridge and the Houses of Parliament. So every travel brochure you'll see for any river cruise will have this picture on it in some fashion.
Mountains too.
Yeah, way off.
Beautiful.
Matthias Church was from 13th century, so it's authentic Gothic church and some beautiful roof tiles. And then beautiful interior as well. And here we are, Bev and me, our guide took this in front of the House of Parliament, which we're going to go to later in the day. So I can't remember the casual comment that I made, but somehow there was a discussion of what the Parliament does. And I said, oh, they make all the policies. And she very discreetly said, well, that's what's supposed to happen. So I had kind
Does
of
that
forgotten.
sound like
Yeah,
familiar?
I know. So I had kind of forgotten because it was such a beautiful city that they have this notorious dictator, Viktor Orban. But I was reminded of that. And in fact, Viktor Orban's been in the news a lot here recently because he's a mentor and friend of Donald Trump. And he particularly was instrumental in inspiring Trump to try to control the universities. That was one of Orban's big things. Fortunately or unfortunately, Orban had an easier time of it than Trump seems to be having, at least so far.
Well, fortunate for us.
Fortunately for us, yeah. Not for them. They lost their big university. It moved to Vienna. Yep. So our guide also mentioned that it's really hard to get into the House of the Parliament. You got to reserve a month ahead. And fortunately, we had reserved a month ahead because
Martin had. He's the-
I had the foresight because we've been there before, so I kind of knew the drill. So we had reserved our House of Parliament tour a month ahead, and it's beautiful architecture. It's a Victorian Gothic. It's not authentic Gothic, and it was inspired really by the British House of Parliament, which was built also Victorian Gothic a number of years before. They claim to be larger than the British House of Parliament in size, but it's certainly, in my opinion, more ornate and beautiful. And interiors even more so. That's one of the chambers. They have two chambers for the upper and lower house, although right now I guess they call it, one of the chambers isn't in existence, so it's just one chamber of the that actually meets, and the other is used for other meetings, and the tourists go to it, so they can do everything at once. But rather incredible. The Victorian Gothic is even more Gothic than real Gothic.
What does it date back to?
This was 1896, which they actually timed for something. This 1000th anniversary of the founding of Budapest, supposedly. This is one of our favorites. It doesn't look like much, but it's the #1 metro line, which they claim is the oldest line in Europe. We seem to end up on that #1 line a lot, so I liked it. And then Badolo Royal Palace. It's a rather small palace because it's basically where the emperor would come when he came to Hungary. So the history is that Austria owned the Habsburgs, and later it became known as the Austrian Empire, owned the entire area of Central Europe. Hungary wanted more independence, and rather than have a fight or a war like people usually do, they had a compromise. And in 1867, the Austrian Empire became the Austro-Hungarian Empire, with Hungary able to control its own internal affairs and Austria the external affairs. And the mechanism for doing this was that they had their parliament, as we saw, for their internal affairs, and for external, they coronated the emperor. I should know his name. Yes, Franz Joseph, the emperor, and the Queen Elizabeth were coronated not only as the emperors of Austria, but they were also king and queen of Hungary, and that's how the two kingdoms were united into one empire. So that's the coronation, which fills an entire wall in the palace. But that was my favorite room in the palace.
Almost looks like David Linsky's scene.
Where's David Linsky? I didn't notice him. Yeah, how about that? Okay. And then we had a big debate as to whether to include this in our slideshow, whether it really is worthy of it. But we decided the pastries, these layer cakes, are very famous in Hungary. They're like the epitome of Hungarian culture. It was in the previous day, our tour guide was talking about these wonderful layer cake pastries, how this very fancy and expensive deli had invented those like 100 years ago, and now they're the representation of Hungary. So they had reserved spots for us in the cafe of the castle, and with our own layer cakes and coffee. Bev didn't have it, but I did.
My grandmother used to make those.
Wow.
When I was growing up.
Oh my God.
Delicious.
I'm impressed.
Oh, that's good.
So I brought mine back to somebody who hadn't come on the excursion with us.
Perfect. Mhm.
Wow.
By the way, if you ever want a authentic Linzer tort,
Yeah.
I took my dad down to Cabrera and Wellesley Hills so
Yeah.
he could taste their Linzer tort. He said it was as good as his mother's.
Oh my God. What is this
So-
place in Wellesley?
Cabrera Bakery down in
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, their Linzer tort.
Haven't had the.
My dad
Lindsay tour.
swears it was as good as his mother's.
Wow.
Well, I'll
I
check
do
it
have
out.
vegan chocolate cake there, but I don't taste anything else because it's not vegan.
So finally, after I think 5 days, we actually got on our ship. So even though the central part of the trip was a cruise, the many days at the beginning, many days at the end were on land and hotels. So this is the Viking cruise ship we got on. And we were welcomed in the lounge with all of our fellow passengers, and we met the crew and the department heads, which are all very, very cooperative and nice. And then as we left, we got to see Budapest at night, which we haven't seen. So the beautiful parliament at night. And this was shot we saw earlier of the chain bridge with the Buda Castle on top. And then we get to our next country. So this may not be the most recognizable flag in the world, but that's Croatia. And by accident of geography, this is the part of Croatia that's on the Danube is basically only this one city, Vukovar, which is the city that was where the war started with Serbia and where a lot of the fighting took place. So that a lot of our stay in Croatia focused on the war. We started we got a house tour. So Viking arranges a lot of interesting things. Before this actually, they took us to a concert in a church where a nice woman was singing and playing instrumentals. Then they took us on a house tour where they broke down into groups of 10 people. We had apple cakes and I think it was
Tea and coffee.
tea, coffee, or cappuccino. I don't remember exactly, but it was something. And Naya is her name. Bev, can you tell what she?
So they basically, we got to see, up close and talk to the families about what happened to them during the invasion by Serbian forces. And she was a teacher, and she was in the city that was attacked, so they needed to flee. So she and a number of other teachers were welcomed in Austria to take a group of children to escape from the war, and they went for, I forget, some number of months. Austria hosted them, and then and kept the kids safe and taught them there. And then they had to return, but she couldn't return to her home. It was still in a war zone, so she went back to her mother's, which was in a different area. And when they finally returned to their home, these soldiers, Serbian soldiers had occupied all the homes and had stolen everything they could take. Basically, anything of value was gone. And, or anything that they could move was gone. So they had to, you know, get their home back into shape and buy everything again, to live in the home. And you can see they've recouped, but it's, you know, but it took a lot.
And they've opened a bed and breakfast, so that's why they are used to welcoming people into their house.
Right.
So how many people were on the boat and that number of people?
There are 190 on the boat. I'm not sure every one of them
That
went on the
includes crew,
tour. No, I think that's just the passengers, but every one of them didn't go on the tour, although the tour, most of them did. So I'm assuming like 160 went on the tour, and we split into 4 buses. And then the buses sort of rotated when they were going to the houses. So we were able to, I think there were 4 different houses, and we came at 2 different times. So that's how we got to a manageable number.
Mhm.
Yeah, the biking is arranges. Actually, I think one of our guides said they were part of the group that was interviewing people to be house hosts.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Question for you. I forgot this piece of history. What became of Slobodan Milosevic from that? Is he in exile? Did he die?
Milosevic, yeah, the dictator of Serbia was put in jail and charged with genocide, and then he died before the trial, is what I believe happened.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice guy.
yeah, that's a sad story. Then in the afternoon, I felt I needed to learn all I could about the war, so I went on the war tour. Actually, it was called what was it called? The War of Liberation Tour, whatever it was called, Serbia's War of Independence Tour. And they call it the War of Independence. Though what you call it depends on what side you're on.
You see brave.
Yeah, oh, yeah. And Vukovar, as I said, was right, that was the city we docked in. It was right on the river, and that was the border. So that's where the fighting started. It was under siege. It was attacked on the edges and surrounded. And this was billed to us as a terrible thing. But the guide then also mentioned that over a third of the 37% of the population of Vukovar were actually Serbs. So from their point of view, maybe it wasn't really a siege. Maybe it was fighting for their liberation. I mean, you know, it's really hard to say what went on. So while I was on the war tour, Bev was going to get away from all this, and she was going to have a pleasant walk around town. So Bev got off the ship and had a nice pleasant walk around town, and this is what she saw.
So it turns out that, this was in the 1990s, but a lot of the buildings that were destroyed or damaged were never rebuilt. People didn't have the money, or if this was a hotel, and it must have been some of the families that owned properties left the country. So I don't know what happened to this one, but residences were kind of like condo situations. I'm not sure how the structure works, but if you wanted to renovate a building, you had to have the buy-in from all of the residents. And some of them had left, some of them had died. And so you walk around and you see all these buildings that have, you know, blown out windows. And then some of the apartments you can see are a little bit, you know, at least from the inside fixed up, but you can't tell from the outside. And then some buildings, they did have buy-in from everyone and they were renovated, but there were a lot that was still just completely, you know, destroyed and abandoned.
So then going back to the tour I was on, this is pretty much in time order. This is our final stop was the water tower, and from that we got a great view. We took an elevator to the top and we got this view, and this, you know, some trips I do a lot of posting on Facebook and some I don't. I just do the trip. This was the only picture I posted on Facebook during the trip because I was really kind of inspired. You got the Danube going down the middle. And instead of the Blue Danube with the Blue Danube waltz, which you can see during the Vienna and Austria, you have basically the war zone here, where you have Croatia on the left and Serbia on the right. There doesn't happen to be any city in Serbia right there, but that Serbia is on the right. And that's the big division in many ways. So the divisions that occurred right at this river is everybody on both sides speaks Serbo-Croatian, same language. But in Croatia, they use Latin letters, and in Serbia, they use Cyrillic letters, as they do in most of further Eastern Europe. Left in Croatia is Roman Catholic. The right in Serbia is is Orthodox. Croatia is part of the EU, so it's really part of Europe, all the different things of Europe. But the EU, they have euros, they're in the Schengen zone, so there's no passports, and they're part of NATO, the whole works. Whereas none of that applies in Serbia, at least right now.
And not likely to, according to my friends in
That
Asia.
could be, they're trying to apply to,
Yeah, but
yeah,
this,
I think they gotta get their act together first.
yeah, exactly.
So the divide is pretty dramatic. In fact, a lot of that divide keeps going. So the fact that the right side of the river is Orthodox Christian, that keeps going as you go. The rest of my trip was in the Orthodox zone. So it has a different feel to it. It definitely has a more Eastern feel as you keep going further east. So then we get the other side of the picture. So waking up, the boat changes flags that morning. And here we are in Serbia. Yeah, the flags look almost similar. They have the three colors, the same colors as the Russian flag, in fact. So we were in Belgrade, capital of Yugoslavia, now capital of Serbia. And we started with the Belgrade Castle, which is a big tourist attraction, in large part because it's on a hill and it's really in the center of Belgrade. And it was a weekend, so everybody was out there for families and everything. Though it's just a classic fortress. And then even more beautiful than that was this church, which is one of the large Orthodox church. This was called Church of Saint Sava, who's the patron saint of Serbia. And it was built, it's fairly modern, started in 1935, completed in 2004, but built in a very Byzantine style. So inside it's incredible. It looks, looks Byzantine, but somehow more ornate than could be seen in any existing such church. Here's a close-up. And then that night, I can't pronounce this guy's name, but he did you'll see his name in a second. He did a lecture called Serbia Today, which actually went beyond Serbia Today. It was the Serbian background, the Serbian history, basically trying to make sense out of all of this stuff. And from the Serbian point of view.
He wrote a book, which Mark.
And we got this book, I got it right, downloaded it on Kindle right away and read through it. It actually took me a while to read through it. It's very, very detailed.
Well, Yugoslavia was always kind of a mishmash of, competing cultures anyway.
It was indeed, yeah. And I think the next slide is the map. Yeah, it is. Okay. So in trying to understand what's going on, let's see if I can make it bigger. And I tried to, there's a map that simplifies this, but I decided I'm not going to simplify it. This is kind of the real thing. So if you look carefully, you can see national boundaries. It's a little hard. The Croatia Bosnia boundary is here. So Bosnia is here, Croatia is on the outer edge, and Serbia is on the right. Those are the main three. And there's others, but those are the ones that were important to us. So this is ethnicity map. So as you may have guessed, the most prominent is blue, which is Serbia, which is Serbs. And Serbia makes sense. Why they didn't have a little Serbia over on the left side too is a big mystery, because there's certainly many Serbs that got left on the left side in Croatia and Bosnia, which turned out to be problematic to say the least. Then the sort of orange brown is the Croats. That's why Croatia is shaped so strangely. And then the green is Muslims. The Bosnian Muslims are called Bosniaks. So Bosnia has 3 competing ethnic groups, Serbia has 2. They tried for many years to come up with a boundary that would work better than the one they have, but they never agreed to it. So unfortunately, they had this boundary that left all these Serbs in Croatia. So what happened in World War II, which is a history we never knew, if I didn't, is that Croatia was trying to get away from Serbia to get independence from the existing Serbian, which was already a country, and Croatia wasn't. So they lined up with the Nazis, which were going to help them with independence. So they created the independent state of Croatia, which of course was not really independent, it was a puppet state. It included Bosnia as well as Croatia. And they started by helping out the Nazis with the Holocaust. They murdered 30,000 Jews and 25,000 Roma gypsies. So that the Nazis didn't have to, which is not unusual, unfortunately. A lot of the Holocaust killing was done by collaborators. But in addition to the 30,000 Jews and 25,000 Roma, they killed 300,000 or more, maybe up to 500,000 Serbs. So the Serbs being the areas colored blue in this whole Bosnia-Croatia area. So 500,000, if it was that number out of 1.8 million, is a huge percentage for an ethnic group that we didn't even realize was under attack in World War II. So in 1991, when Croatia unilaterally declared independence with all those blue areas within it, Serbs were not too happy, as you might have expected. They were a little bit worried. And they fought against it. Both the Serbs in Croatia and backed up by Serbia, the country itself. So that's the
That time it was Yugoslavia.
right. It was called Yugoslavia.
Martin, I'm sitting right close and there's 2 different colors of blue. And the
Oh,
first,
there's one down in the corner, Montenegro.
the lighter one, which is the area off to the right, says Serbs, and then the darker one says Montenegrin.
Yeah, Montenegro
Is
is.
that really different?
I don't not that I know. They never hear about Montenegro, so I assume they're.
So that whole area that's dark blue on the upper left.
No, I don't think that's.
is the-
Yeah, it
is
looks
the
like it
dark
is,
blue.
but I didn't think it was.
Yeah,
My understanding is Montenegro, the Montenegrins are only within this area in the corner down here, which is the actual country of Montenegro.
Yeah.
This is now an independent country of Montenegro.
Mhm.
So Rick Devereaux has a question also.
Oh, yeah.
Just wondered, what was the complaint the Croats had with being, was it religious differences, or were they poorly treated by Serbian governments that didn't include them? Do you know?
I think the answer to that is yes.
The answer is yes. The answer is it varies. So, yeah, Rich seemed to have a different opinion of Tito than I had seen. What my book had told me is that Tito, at least you may be talking about a different period, but during the period after World War II, when Tito was head of Yugoslavia, he, according to my book, was very outgoing in trying to integrate the groups and get the groups to cooperate. He actually was not a Serb. His parents, one was a Croatian and one was something else. He wasn't even a Serb. So his goal was to have people identify themselves as Yugoslavians, like we might have identify ourselves as Americans and not as their individual original ethnic groups. And up to a point, some did. In one of the censuses, we had 10% of the people of Yugoslavia identifying themselves as Yugoslavs rather than as their original ethnic group.
Well, and my grandmother and grandfather always identified them as Yugoslavian, even though my grandmother was a Croatian Jew and my grandfather was born in Vienna.
Wow.
So, and they lived in Belgrade, which is Serbia. So, it wasn't easy for my father being, the child of, in Serbia, being child of a Croat and an Austrian
And being Jewish.
and being Jewish.
So we brought up Slobodan Milosevic earlier, and this is where he really becomes the villain, because you can see that Serbs pushing back against Croatians' independence may have made some sense, but he turned it into a genocide against the Croatians and
the Bosnians.
and the Bosnians. And then it was, it's really just incredible how things can turn out awful when they didn't need to be.
Rick has another question. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Rick, you can unmute yourself, Rick. Go ahead. You're muted.
Sorry about that. It kept not doing it. Anyway, in the city you just showed before this that was bombed out, can you show on the cursor where that was approximately on
Sure.
this map?
Yeah, this is the line between
So,
Serbia and Croatia. Yeah,
so
right
that's the
here.
Danube there.
The Danube. Yeah, it's hard to see in this, but so maybe it's one of those areas that's like double colored because there were both
Yeah,
Croatians and Serbs. I can't identify which one of those. The border areas you see, a lot of the areas are actually multicolored. People don't necessarily divide themselves, into towns that are one culture only. They have no, they would have no need to unless they knew that all this was going to happen in the future.
I have a question too, is sort of that, we got all these different categories. How did Bosnia sort of fit in? We've got the Serbs, the Croatians, the Bosnians, they have their own. How did that fit in the whole mix?
We didn't actually go.
We didn't go to
Bosnia.
Bosnia, so we don't have to answer
We
the
didn't.
question. No, it's the same issue, but more complicated because the Bosniaks were the majority group, even though it doesn't look it on that map, and they were trying to. It ended up though, very barely visible. They ended up dividing Bosnia with a very light line, with Serbs sort of controlling the area on the northeast, and then Bosniaks and Croatians controlling the rest. But I would say the situation is definitely not resolved.
Bosnia was part of Yugoslavia, Soviet, way back when, but it always said on an independent country.
It was never, no, nothing was ever except Serbia was independent earlier, but the others were never independent before.
Well, you got to realize that Yugoslavia was a construct of post-World War II. It didn't exist between the war. It sort of existed between the wars, but it was mostly, until World War I, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. It really was a very short-lived conglomerate country.
Yeah, and the people we talked to from Serbia would like to go back to the Yugoslav concept of people living together. Hopefully in peace and harmony.
There was somebody on the trip who was actually talking to one of our, either the guides or the author of the book, saying he had been a diplomat in the US, and the US was actually pushing for Yugoslavia to stay together. So
Easier to deal with one country than five.
Okay, so moving on, the other thing we saw in Serbia was a little further down the river, we went to this beautiful fortress called Golubac Fortress, right on the water. Beautiful scenery, and here we are. It was freezing cold though, so we had our winter clothes on. And this is the famous iron gates that we'd already talked about as we went through them. It's a just dramatic scenic area.
That's a
And then
monastery on the left.
Monastery was on the left, and then the statue of Decabalus. I'm sure you've heard of him. I certainly haven't. He was apparently a leader prior to the Roman times, so way back. But they decided to honor him. But that was just completed in 2004. It's very new. Yeah.
Wow.
And then Balkan night on the ship. So this is the dining room, all decorated for the Taste of Balkan night with some special Taste of Balkan food. And then our favorite waiter and waitresses with their native costumes. So almost all the waiters and waitresses came from the area. So Vasilina, which is the woman, is from Bulgaria. And then Simon is in the back. He's from Poland, which is actually outside of where we went, but pretty close to it.
The staff was lovely.
And it's off past 10 o'clock, so we should be winding down, but of course, it always takes longer than I think, so we'll see what we can do. I'll try to.
People have to get
try to go
off, it's
faster,
understandable.
Yeah, it's hard to go fast with some of the political stuff, but hopefully we can go a little faster during the non-political. So this is now Bulgaria. This is confusing, same colors as the Hungary flag, but in different order. And we saw another fortress. This is rather impressive. This is the Belgrade Czech rocks and fortress. It's a natural rocks and a built fortress all in one, which was pretty cool. You have to climb up this back over the town. And here we are. We made it. It was another windy and frigid day. We didn't quite know whether we'd make it, but we did. And the rocks are incredible.
It's incredible.
What month was this?
April.
April.
Yeah, we were prepared. Last time we went, it was April. It was March to April, and
really
people
warm.
were at their outdoor cafes every day. And this time, no, it was a little different.
We were in higher elevation and also further north, I think.
So one nice thing that Viking did, among others, is they would take us to restaurants. Sometimes restaurants were included, sometimes not, but they would take us to restaurants that had singing and dancing and other interesting things. And they'd sometimes have dancers on the ship. They'd bring them on. So this is in Bulgaria, and there's a video, and I don't know how it's going to play. There's a little problem, I think, with the bandwidth, but let's see how well it's going to play. But I compiled all the dancing from 5 out of the 6 countries all together. Yeah. Thank you. Go. Okay, we made it through. So, so my sister Irene was part of a folk dance group from way back called Mandala, based in Cambridge, and they.
I remember that.
Oh, good. Yeah, so she was a musician, not a dancer, but they used to do dances from all over the world, but they specialized in the Balkans, of which most of these were. And I sent it to her right from the ship and said,
Have you got more to share?
Yeah.
Have you got more? I'm just wondering because you got a
We can
blank.
get off, right, we can put people back on.
oh, okay. Yeah, so I sent it to her and we both agreed that the Balkan dances kind of mesh together. It's hard to pick out which country is which, but they're definitely a theme. And this gets to our last country, Romania. Oh, we did make it to Romania. Okay, good. So Don on the Danube with the last country, and the first thing we did in Romania is that Viking arranged a presentation at Revolution Square. So we get back into the politics. Bev's going to talk about that. The guy's name is Edmund that talked to us.
So he was actually in the revolt against Ceausescu when he was a teenager. I think he was like 15. And so he's still young enough to be able to present now.
I should go back and say this was 1989. That's 1989 is the year all of the Iron Curtain countries pulled out from the Soviet Union, all in that same year.
So he survived, but he lost friends because Ceausescu didn't allow revolts and he sent the army out against them. But then Ceausescu made the mistake of actually either executing or doing something to some of the leaders in the armed forces. So he lost the support of the armed forces, and the whole country turned against him. And he went out to present his speech in the balcony and expected a warm reception, and he got things thrown at him. And he got taken out by helicopter, went somewhere else. He was arrested. He was summarily tried, like it was a show trial, and executed along with his wife, who was apparently really terrible as well. That they were, very much hated, both of them. They were using their position to gain for themselves and not for the people. So they were summarily executed, both of them, and she got more bullets than he did because she was even hated more.
So people on our tour weren't too happy about this execution. That's why couldn't we just go peacefully? It turns out that all of the other dictators of all the other communist countries in 1989 had stepped down voluntarily. And this guy was not going to step down. So that's a lesson to be learned.
Yes, indeed.
And they all have these flags at the revolutionary, at that rally. That's the Romanian flag had a communist symbol in the middle, and they cut it out.
And then they sometimes wore it up as a
Shawl?
banner.
Yeah. And then he has a bullet left over or a shell left over from the fighting.
Whoa.
Okay, this is what give me the dictator's name again. I can never remember.
Ceausescu.
Ceausescu. Yeah, this is his legacy to the future. He decided he was going to build the world's biggest building. It's actually the second largest office building after the Pentagon, and this is called the Palace of Parliament, not the House of Parliament, the Palace of Parliament. And what it lacks in beauty, it makes up in size. It is rather huge, and it never was finished in his lifetime. And at the end, nobody wanted it, but they put so much money into it, they had to at least finish the rooms that they could, and they're using it. And along the same lines, this is a typical Soviet style building that you're going to see in all the former communist countries. They're all over the place. They're still there, and it's
We went to
They're really
Belarus.
functional, so.
yeah.
We went to Belarus several years back to do an Eastern European heritage tour, and you could just see the kind of heavy Soviet style in the buildings. It was really oppressive.
Yes.
It just felt oppressive.
And then we get on the bus, and we're going to take our post cruise excursion to Transylvania, which about one busload of people went on to Transylvania. And starting in Pelesh Palace, which is the new king had built this in 1873. This is King Carol. So what happened is these were all part of the Ottoman Empire, these countries, at least in the southeast in the Balkans. And in the 1870s, some of them were able to get independence. And Romania was one of those. So they went shopping for a king because you need a king if you're independent. And they found one in Prussia, which is now Germany. And so King Carol came, and he was a good king, and he built this beautiful palace, which people like to visit now. I guess
An interesting thing to note, Romanian is a Romance language. It's not it's not a Slavic language. It's actually a Romance language, more closely related to French and Spanish.
that's right. Yeah. It's rather amazing. It's the only one out there too.
Yeah.
Which is probably why it's the only one that's surrounded by countries that have used the Cyrillic alphabet, and they use Latin. This is the armory room. He liked to collect things. And that's the assembly room. And this is the exterior when it started, just starting to snow. We were saying, what's going on April 10th? Why is it snowing? But it was starting to snow. And it doesn't normally snow, although Transylvania is generally pretty high up.
But
There is a mountain range.
I looked at the weather report at home, and guess what?
It was
It
snowing.
was snowing in Natick.
Yeah, I don't know.
I was thinking, it's like, we had some snow.
Right, right.
Yeah, we don't usually, but anyway, now it's really getting going. We actually had to go over the mountain range. So Transylvania means across the forest, but if you could also say it's across the mountains, because you have to go past the Carpathian Mountains, surrounded on three sides by the Carpathian Mountains. And doing that in the snow was a little tricky, so it took us a couple of extra hours to get there, to get to where we're going that night. Then the next morning the snow was still on the ground. And this is something unique that they only have here. They had 180 of these fortified churches. So they don't have a lot of castles, but they needed to protect themselves somehow, so they built fortifications around the churches. And this is built in 1218, believe it or not. And here's the fortification part of it. The church itself is like an ordinary church. It's not that exciting, but the fortification
Are
is
we
cool.
in Orthodox land or?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, totally Orthodox, everything. Yeah. And Transylvania is really an interesting multicultural place, which is kind of nice when you see those ethnic maps sometimes. It was part of Hungary until World War One. Because Austria-Hungary lost World War One, they had to give Transylvania to the Romanians, which was okay because part of the population was Romanian as well. But there's the largest group of Roma gypsies anywhere in Transylvania. And one of our guides said that you should call them gypsies. And one said, no, you should call them Roma. And then the third one said, no, you should call them Roma gypsies. So I'll stick with Roma gypsies, but sometimes it's hard to be politically correct when you can't find out which way that is. So this is a blacksmith in the Roma gypsies, who is, he has a regular profession, but it was really a blacksmith shop that could have been out of Old Sturbridge Village in 1800. It was really old fashioned technology. And here's a video of that.
Because I will show you why, because sometimes too much in the burn, you know?
About that thing in the middle.
They're not only making horseshoe, you know? Like the locks, the whole locks, and also the ones that you close the door, I call this.
Learning. See, now it's just
That's called the big
Goodbye from
the big number. That is called.
one for our son and
But
one for
to the father, like this. Not like us for our kids. Can you please? No, you do it. Oh, it's good that they learn because this kind of tradition workshop doesn't really, you know, people doing, you know. So what they are doing now, they actually create a canal in the middle of it because then they will have to hook the shoe, the horseshoe.
The audio in the video just got insane.
They have to put.
Do they still do work with horses?
Yes, yes.
I
And
haven't
we will
seen
see today.
I
We
haven't
will see
seen the
today.
horses.
We will see. We will see for sure. Maybe it's too cold, but most of the time.
All right, and then moving on, in the same little village, a lot of interesting things in the village. This is King Charles's house. And by King Charles, we're not talking about any historic King Charles. We're talking about King Charles III of England, who when he was Prince of Wales, somehow came to Transylvania and fell in love with it. And has a little retreat here.
He's gifted this house.
He gifted it, yeah, and he lets people in, and he also has donated a lot to preserve the cultures and to preserve the wildlife and the biodiversity. So this is kind of a hidden thing that we wouldn't have known about him. And this bedroom is very modest. Does not look like, you couldn't
He
say.
doesn't stay there anymore. It's kind of more like a museum,
Yeah.
but he did stay there
Yeah.
at one time. He's got another place.
And then this is one of the most nice cities, I just can't pronounce it. It's Sigiasura is a walled medieval city in the middle of Transylvania. It's very popular for tourists. And the sort of the key thing there is that clock tower, which is from the 13th to 14th century. That's sort of the center, and then it radiates out from there with beautiful shops and restaurants.
I'm looking at the antlers on the corner with two animals painted on the corner.
I'm sorry, what?
The antlers. On the right,
On the right,
it's like
there you go.
two deer and then one.
Oh,
That's
wow.
big pass.
Oh my God, yeah. That's interesting.
Was it in?
Yeah, I could, I think, well, maybe I can't.
Oops, it just went back up.
That's fun.
That is something.
Curious.
Yeah,
Looks
it's got
like
the
real
painting that
antlers.
goes with it too. That is really weird.
Yeah.
All sorts of interesting things too. Okay, so there's the clock itself with a little bit of things that move, but if you go the right time, which we did. And here we are at the top overlooking the whole valley. Again, it must have been cold. I don't remember that, but it seemed to always be cold. And then we get to, we get some Dracula stuff. Okay, so this is the top sign. It's the house where Vlad Dracul lived in the 1430s. So Vlad is the name, his first name, and Dracul means Order of the Dragon. So he had gone to Hungary and been inducted into the Order of the Dragon. So he was called Vlad Dracul. He was a ruler of this part of Romania, part of Transylvania. And then in this language, I assume it's Romanian, if you add an A, it becomes the son of, or the son. So Vlad Dracula would be a name for his son. He also was called Vlad the Impaler, which because he was, well, you can talk about
It was
it.
pretty cutthroat.
We'll talk about it later because we get the statue.
Literally.
We'll wait for the statue. Okay. And then the bottom is the sign for the restaurant. So as we're saying, yeah, just like Spanish, Casa Vlad Dracul. And I only know a few words in
That's
Spanish.
what you were saying, it's a romance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here we are having our Romanian lunch. And there's the real bad Vlad Dracula. So you want to tell what he did?
So he was a pretty nasty character, and so he was, the whole Dracula series was kind of used his name very loosely. And he obviously had nothing to do with being a vampire, but he was pretty cutthroat. And so that name kind of got taken over for the Dracula series.
And we went shopping for some nice dishes in this beautiful street. And then the last day we get to Dracula's castle. So we're ending at Dracula's castle, our last tour. And this immediately reminded me of Salem, Massachusetts, because we have tourist shops that are providing Dracula souvenirs that have even less to do with the real Dracula than the witches in the witch shops in Salem have to do with the witch trials. So in this case, the real Dracula may have stayed here once, maybe not, but he certainly didn't live here. Bram Stoker, the author of the book in 1897, never came to Transylvania at all. He actually wrote about, in his book, he mentioned a city in the very north of Transylvania that was near the castle, but we're in the very south of Transylvania. So I think that whoever owned the castle decided to just take advantage of the situation. They have a very imposing castle. It looks like it could be haunted. It looks like there could be somebody living there of interest. And they took it from there.
It's a completely made up tourist thing.
And here's your typical Dracula souvenirs. And then you've got a pretend haunted castle, because why go to the real one when you have a pretend one you can go to? And then the Halloween tie-in is even more than I realized. Whoops, okay. if you zoom in, you'll see that they're advertising for Halloween night, even though it's only April, they're already mentioning Halloween night is coming up. So I Googled, like, what are the best, ooh, it looks, I'm sure they have things to make it scary too. I looked up what are the world's best top Halloween destinations, and you'll find Salem, Massachusetts will be there, and Transylvania will be there. I think I would recommend Transylvania. It's more interesting.
In Salem, there's no parking on Halloween.
Yeah,
Having tried,
I know.
I had an appointment up there and I couldn't find parking.
Yeah. Sometimes I forget and I go there and say, and here's the haunted part, and it's just a secret staircase.
Yeah.
And then looking over the courtyard, and then here I am with a friendly knight, and that's our last shot, actually.
That's pretty small.
So sorry for going over so much. We tried to preview it.
Actually, we're okay.
But,
We have to end it. We ended at 10:30. Yeah.
Oh, I thought we
Yeah.
ended it. Okay.
No, we try to kind of end by 10 or so we can just chit chat. But yeah, we're 10:30. So there we are. And now I can actually see who's in the group on Zoom. So any questions or comments? We can go with another few minutes.
People should be able to unmute themselves.
Can we see the group?
I'm trying to get there.
So one of the things I know about Pennsylvania is that that's where Unitarianism was.
Oh, really?
started.
Really? I didn't know that at all.
That didn't come up at all.
Did
So
not
I have a
know.
friend who did a unit from the first parish in Weston. They went on a special tour
Wow.
to Transylvania for that particular purpose.
That's interesting. Actually, we didn't go that many churches. So in terms of the religions,
Friendly's got
you know, I said, let me finish this one thought. I mentioned that everything in the East was all Orthodox, but Transylvania probably wasn't, even though, because they have a large Hungarian population. So that may have been mixed. And then the Unitarian may have, I don't know.
I don't know why people can't unmute themselves.
Got hands raised.
Well, it's like the host will say, yes, they can unmute themselves, but I guess.
Did you just unmute me? Because mine just automatically unmuted right now, and
Yes,
it wasn't letting me do it. But
why? I'm confused because the Zoom settings say you can, but.
oh well, every time we try, it says the host isn't allowing people to unmute. Anyway, sorry. I just wanted to say that is what an incredible trip. I have always wanted to take one of those river cruises. I like you say, you can't get away from them if you watch public broadcasting. And that is the trip you just did is an area that interests me. My husband's family is Serbian. And so a lot of that history really interests me, and thank you for sharing all of that. I couldn't unmute back then, but I will say the first synagogue that you were showing with the high arched ceilings really kind of made me take a breath intake, because it seemed like, synagogues in my experience don't look like that. And so it really did make me think of, my goodness, what a time difference to see that. That was quite an interesting one to share. And then I loved the second one. That was those were stunning pictures, and how incredibly cool that you found such a history for your friend, because that's like, what an incredible story to share and to have that happen. I'm just obviously dumbfounded by it, because it's such a journey.
For me, that was the highlight of the trip.
Oh, yeah.
It was interesting because people asked if we have relatives there. We don't. But the Jewish experience does have some commonalities. Our ancestors all came from further east in Belarus, Latvia, and Lithuania, as we told you last time.
And
Ukraine, yeah.
And a little bit
But
Polish.
there's clearly a lot of similarities.
But it's just, It was really special. She's a really good friend, and she actually does Holocaust presentations, telling the story of her parents and their extraordinary escapes, each one of them from the Nazis.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead, Rick. I think I fixed the unmute problem.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. I was just going to say, Cordoba has I think in Spain has a vaulted ceiling where there is inside both a temple and a cathedral and I don't know, and also a Muslim temple. So it's the only thing I can think of that had a ceiling at all like that one.
Oh, interesting. I don't remember that, but yeah, could be.
Go back and look at her
Yeah,
photos.
yeah.
But this was an amazing tour. Thank you so much for sharing it, and interesting throughout, but fascinating politics and history and beautiful scenes. Not sure I'd want to go in April after seeing your weather.
I was surprised, but
the weather here in April wasn't great either. I didn't miss it.
Oh, for New Englanders, except I wasn't really bringing clothes for winter because I didn't expect it. I thought we could have, I suppose. But yeah, I was. We ended in mid-April, so it was. That's when the snow was in Transylvania. But Transylvania is up high. Transylvania's in the mountains.
It also depends on the year. This year seemed to be much colder than last year, around the same time.
Where does the river actually end? It didn't look like it.
Where would you expect? It ends in Ukraine. It's like Ukraine, we can't get away from it here. It ends, if you go all the way up the top, as high in Romania as you can, as far north, and then the delta itself extends into Ukraine. I don't think you can navigate through the Ukraine part because there's a canal that would take you across Romania to get to the sea itself, but the delta is actually in Ukraine. So that gives it 10 countries. There are 10 countries on the Danube.
So maybe that's why that part of Ukraine is a breadbasket for a lot of Europe, then with a delta flowing into it. I don't know.
Well, it's also relatively flat, so.
Yeah. And then I did have a question about whether Bosnia didn't look like it had any access to the what is that? What sea is that between Italy and
That's funny. Everybody keeps posting on Facebook, oh, Bosnia needs access to the water. It's like, why is that a concern? It actually has a 20-mile wide strip that it can get to the sea with.
Really?
Yeah.
But I think Serbia didn't. Did Serbia have?
Serbia is nowhere near the
Right.
ocean. That's one of the reasons they wanted to conquer all these other countries.
Right. They wanted access.
Yeah. So in that way, the whole Yugoslavia concept makes a little bit of sense, but at least you'd hope they could cooperate.
It's not happening in the world much these days.
Not much. No.
I will say when we get to it, I do have a series of announcements for afterwards when we're done.
Okay, yeah, and I'll play the moderator role. I'll switch roles. You can help though with that part. Yeah, anybody else? Any other questions on the trip itself, and then we can go to other subjects and announcements and so forth. Okay, we'll switch over. Thank you. So thanks everybody for letting me do this. It was fun for me too to organize everything and to get all this feedback.
Thank you. It was incredible.
Thanks for doing it. Yeah.
I don't remember who's next week, but Doug will be back to take over, and we'll leave a little time for announcements and anything else that's coming out.
Kathleen, thanks again for yesterday.
Yeah. So yeah, Brenda, you can make your announcement.
Sure. Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I had my list in front of me. I had to get back to it. I wanted to. I'm going to give a couple of that probably don't require any feedback, and then a couple that might. One is this Thursday is our first Natick Nights Out for the summer. And for anybody who didn't get a chance to see the Clark building, they are opening up again this Thursday to correspond with Natick Nights. I think they're starting at 5 that you can get in and see it. And then Natick Nights is at 5:30 or 6. And Natick Nights is really fun downtown. It's great. So if any of you have not had a chance to do it, I would say that's pretty great. On Tuesdays, the farm has started a pop-up market at the senior center. So if ever you're not able to make it on Saturday to the farmers market, for flowers and veggies and such from the farm, they are at the senior center at 9 a.m. on Tuesdays, throughout the summer. So they'll be there, tomorrow at 9. This Wednesday is our select board meeting with our state Dems, with our state reps. So Spilka and Linsky will be there, giving the state of address for Natick, as it were. I'm guessing they'll talk about the special act and the things that have been going through and other things that are up. If you have a specific question, they might honor specific questions.
Yeah, all of that stuff is, we've pre-sent them a bunch of questions, including what's with the special act, what's going on with the Municipal Empowerment Act, other questions like, are we ever going to get hybrid town meetings legal, things like that. So they're going to be talking about a lot of stuff on Wednesday night.
That's cool.
And then after that, it's actually really cool to go to. I've been going to them in recent years, and it's a pretty cool thing to go sit and listen and watch the questioning. And it is a joint session with the school committee. So I'm sure that there will be questions that come up about that as well. And then they will, when that's done, they're going to do a Johnson site walk follow-up. There was a site walk led on Saturday morning. It did not go into the building, but it walked around the outside talking about the properties. There were 3 groups. Each group had a town rep and a select board rep, and they took questions and answers, and they're going to do the follow-up with that and with the most recent flash vote survey that came out. I would say if anybody here hasn't signed up for flash vote, please do. Let's see. There's a bunch of us here that went to the mapping meeting last week. I would love for us to at some point have a conversation with that, because I thought it was pretty groovy to see what their recommendations are and what's also recommended for Framingham and Ashland. And I think that would be cool. I got the map for Natick, and it's either going to be put up in town hall or at the library. Haven't decided yet, still working on that so that people can see what they're talking about for Natick. And then the last comment is Catherine Coughlin texted me this morning and asked me to share, and I will put it in the chat, to share an upcoming Zoom with you all from the Council on Foreign Relations. They're having a board meeting, a Zoom meeting this morning, media briefing, they're calling it, regarding the U.S. striking Iran, and what they think could be next with that. And anybody can go. She thinks that the presenters are extremely good on this. The chat doesn't let me put in a screenshot of who it is. So if anybody wants to email me directly, I can forward this to you. But I will put the link.
Yeah, I have the same information.
Okay, so it's this morning at 11:30. It's supposed to be an hour from 11:30 to 12:30, and she thought that this group, particularly since you guys are so interested in, so many of you are interested in history and what's happening, that you might like to listen in on that. So I'm going to put that link right now into the chat.
So,
and
Emily, I'm here with my computer. If I go to the Council on Foreign Relations website, will I?
I'll get it to you.
I would get it. I don't know if they've actually put it directly on their website. I think that it came as an email. So
Rich.
So I would get it from Rich.
After the meeting, give me your email address. I'll forward it to you.
Perfect. And so I think that's it. That's it for my meetings. Sorry. Thanks for humoring me.
Brinley?
Yeah, you're always reliable in coming up with the things we need to know.
And I'm gonna give a big shout out to Rich, to thank you for doing not only the technology, but adding to our presentation.
Yeah, and you can keep coming, really. you can.
Yeah.
Do you wanna tell us about next week?
I don't remember next week. Brinley, do you have next week? Oh, God, I have it
Yeah,
somewhere.
give me just a second. Give me just a second and I'll get it.
I got all the emails that Ben gets, but I can't
The
remember.
organic farm next week.
Good farm, okay, good, good.
Oh, yeah, I knew that. Duh. So we're
Nope.
gonna start at 9. And they're gonna come in between 9:10 and 9:15 because they have to get their camps started and everything. So Doug said that we could just have a few minute chat before they show up, and then they'll show up.
Okay.
They're not going to be able to join in person because of the time of year.
All right. Okay, well, thank you all.
Thank
And
you,
we'll see
everyone.
See you next week.
Thank
See y'all
you.
later.
Thank you guys so much.